Alright, here we are, and we're going to solder brass and piano wire. So this is an old motor bracket. This is before the days where we had to cut it. So this is an older style motor bracket, so I'll use an example. You could use these pins that are available from Slot Car Corner or Amazon, or you could use brad nails. And this is a jeweler's board, which also Slot Car Corner carries. And the jeweler's board allows you to pin this and hold it in the position you need to hold it in when you're soldering. Brass chassis. But we'll cover just, we're not covering a build here, but we're just covering just soldering. So the most important thing is you can use 1000 grit sandpaper, and it's always say clean brass is happy brass. So what you always want to do is clean the surface of your work area that you're doing. So see how it's nice and shiny? It doesn't take much to shine this up. I'm just doing the whole thing just to show you how nice and shiny they'll get, but you want to clean it up. This has been sitting a while. So there you go, nice and clean. You get a nice clean surface, it'll solder a lot easier. And then say if you're doing a tubing, or you're doing a rear axle, and you need to solder it onto the motor bracket. This is what I'm doing here, is cleaning this up. And again, cleaning the surface is super important. I know you can't see me do this on camera. Let me put it right here. And all I'm doing is just cleaning this up really good, nice and clean. Now the acid flux is a self-cleaning flux in a way, or it is. So when you solder, it's going to, how would you say, clean as you're soldering it. Let me open this up just a tad bit. If I could find my rat tail file, which here it is. And I'm just sanding area so it's easier to pass things through. For example, you could use also a chainsaw bit for this too if you have one. I don't. And then you see how easy that passes through. And so we're just going to solder this as an example. So I'm just going to pin it here, and I'm not really going to hold it too much. I'm not making a build, so I'm not doing correct, accurate measurements or anything. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. So say you have to solder this. So let me move the camera closer so you can see what I'm doing when I solder. And there we go. So we're going to get example, and again, I'm not going for accuracy here because this is just a instructional video in a way. Let me just pin this as it doesn't move. So say you're going to solder this area here, and I've done a couple of videos about this, about soldering these axles onto the motor bracket. So here's your acid flux. What you're going to do is put just like that, just coat it like that, and then you're going to grab your solder, and then you're going to grab your soldering iron, and then you're going to heat it up. And always make sure your tip is clean. You could use the see how that's having a problem getting on there. Now if that happens, that's where this tip tinner, this is right there, let me show it to you. See, it's kind of like falling off of it. There, got a little on there. So this is where the tip tinning stuff comes in handy. So if we pre-tin this, it'll be easier for the solder to attach to if it's being stubborn. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. There we go. So that kind of helps a little. And then what you do is you're just going to put heat on this just like that, and you're going to hold it. You're going to see that the acid flux is going to allow and help to solder the flow around your work. And you let it go. Now this is really hot right now, so remember, don't pick this stuff up until it cools off. And what you want to do is let it cool off. As you can see how I'm soldering that on there, how it flows all the way around there. And I could do it again just so you can see it move. See how that's like sweating around it? That's basically what you're doing, is heating up the surface. And you can go around like that, see? And you're soldering the tube in. Then let it cool. And that's how you solder brass on brass. And this basically is the basic thing for everything. If you're gonna solder the rails to there. So let's get a piece of channel here. And again, I'm just doing this just to show you. And that stuff gets really hot. So for example, if you're gonna do that, and then you put some flux on here, and I'm doing this kind of nonchalantly because I don't have anything locked down. Get your solder. I'm going to hold this and let it go as soon as it gets warm, And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do just like that. Now you see how that flows? That's what the acid flux is doing, is helping the solder to flow like that. So actually, if this was pinned in, you can move it around easier. I'm kind of holding it with my finger because the heat, see, it just moved. The heat will transfer through this brass and you will burn your finger. So remember that. So if I put it right there, you can see how it flows. And that's how you attach brass to a motor bracket or whatever you're working on. Really simple. Nothing tough about it. As you could see how the acid flux allowed the solder to flow in between there, and then you got a nice solid mount there, and that's not going to break or go anywhere. I mean, if it flies off the track, I don't think it would do anything. That's a solid soldering joint right there. So now with piano wire, it's no different. As always, you want to clean your metals. So we're going to clean this. Now this has been sitting in that tray for a long time, so things will get corroded and rusty. And there are different ways to clean brass too. CLR is another good thing to clean brass. So say if you have a chassis sitting for a long time and it's got tarnished, CLR is a good one to use. Harry has used it before on chassis. So see, this chassis has been sitting a long time. So if I put CLR in this and clean it up, it'll come out nice and bright, and I can polish all this. And this is just a chassis I put together that I don't know what the heck I'm going to use it for, but I just put it together for fun, just to, you know, fool around. So here you have your wire done here, right? You have it all cleaned up. That's all cooled off so you don't burn your fingers. Say you want to make a channel there, or say you want to put it on the side like that, right? So you'll pin this, of course, and I'm doing this just willy-nilly here. That should hold there. Now I'm going to do is get my flux. I'll add a little here, or actually I have a lot there. And then what I'll do is I'll get my solder. And again, the more flux you put in the area that you're putting it on, that's where the solder is going to flow toward and flow around. So I'll put some right here. That was quite a bit there that I added. And then we'll just do this. As you can see, everything flows. See how that solder is flowing? And you can move it just like that. And go across, heating everything up, and there you go. That is piano wire soldered with brass. Nothing to it. Of course, don't touch it because it's hot. Don't touch that dial, as they say. And then, you know, if this is a little dirty, you could use your tool to clean the tip like this, and it cleans up the tip nicely. Or you could use a sponge if that's all you have, and the sponge will clean it nicely too, as you can see. You want to keep the tip clean, is important. That's why this tip tinner is kind of nice. So if it's not sticking real good, use a little tip tinner and tin the tip, and then you're able to, you know, solder a little bit easier. It doesn't become difficult or globby. So there you go. That is a solid, as you can see all the way here, it's gone through, and this is not as hot anymore. And that's a solid joint right there. That it's not going to go anywhere. I could, you know, bang this around and it's fine. So that's basically it for just basic soldering on brass, piano wire, and wires themselves.